Lynn. Welcome, warriors, where we fight for the safety, dignity, and future of every child in America. Today's guest is a true force in the fight against exploitation and trafficking. Jan Edwards, founding of Paving the Way Foundation, joins us to expose the hard truths most people are too afraid to face. She's nationally recognized advocate, speaker, educator, powerhouse in Washington, D.C., and her home state of Florida. She is educating communities and especially our kids to prevent trafficking before it even starts. So in this episode, we're going to be digging into grooming, the grooming pipeline, the power of early education, and why prevention, not just rescue, is the battlefield we must win. But we're also going to jump into a little bit later on. You know, Jan is a confidant, an ally, a warrior. When the Shawn Combs, as you know, warriors, I call him Dirty Diddy, when that verdict came in, not guilty for sex trafficking, I jumped to Jan just to ask her thoughts on that. So we're going to dissect a little bit. What actually is sex trafficking? I know we talk about it a lot, but let's really break it down. What is consent? What is really this force, fraud, coercion is thrown out there all the time? What is sexual servitude? What does it really mean? Jan's the expert. We're going to talk all about that. But get ready because the conversation is real, raw, but absolutely necessary. Subscribe to our channel. I have no shame, Jan. We want this interview shared with everybody. Stand up, warriors, because you are the difference. The website is pavingthewayfoundation.org. Jan is very active on LinkedIn. I will have all of her information in the body of the video. Let's get to it. Jan Edwards, welcome back, dear friend, to the Warriors.
Thank you, Lynn. I so love having these conversations with you because we are raw and we're real. And, you know, because we're talking about youth, we're authentic. And authenticity wins the day. It's one of my waves is authenticity wins the day. And when you work with young people, if you're not authentic, they can smell you know what a mile away. So that's the only way you and I know how to be, really. We can be tactful when necessary. And, you know, when you're in particular situations and environments, I will manage my how I, you know, what I say and all of that. However, I do know when you're authentic, people can either choose to believe what you have to say or not. It's their choice. And what we say is real. What we say is the truth. So there you go.
Yeah, I like that you started with that, Jan, because I don't even know how to be any other way. And you are that way as well. And I think that really speaks volumes in really getting through, and especially your boots on the ground with kids. And I wanted to start with, you're really on the front lines every day. What are kids telling you right now? What's the landscape like in schools, online, and in their homes? What are they revealing to you that you want to share with us?
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm so glad you asked me that question because it's really interesting. I was having this dialogue yesterday with a friend of mine. So we are inside the Orange County School District and we're working with seventh graders. If I had more money, I'd educate all of the middle schoolers, but you know, we're being mindful with our money and we're focusing on seventh graders for two reasons. One, they're kind of like the middle children of middle school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And secondly, I want that information to be at that school. I want a legacy of data and information and actions to take at that school for a year to a year and a half. So it's the reason why we focus on seventh graders. So last fall, we trained about 2,300 kids inside the OCPS school system. Yeah. We're busy. We're busy. When people go, Jan, how's your summer? I'm like, we're just as busy now as we are.
No summer for Jan.
No, we get about 6 weeks mingled throughout the year where we're not doing anything. But yeah, anyway. And we have a question. We talk about vulnerabilities. And we use this great video called I Am Little Red. We purchased it. And it's got this great handbook. And it gives you questions to ask the youth for them to see they're actually vulnerable to potential online and in-person predators, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the questions is, have you ever felt so angry, upset, or frustrated at your parents, guardians, or siblings that you've thought about running away? That's the full question I have to ask, right? I get to, have you ever felt upset, frustrated, angry at your guardians, parents, or siblings? They all stand up. I'm like, ooh, okay, I haven't finished my question yet. And clearly there was anger in the space. And here's the interesting piece, Lynn. They couldn't put a finger as to why. Now, I believe I know. I think they were picking up the energy out in the space. That's what I believe, is people were upset about a variety of things, and kids pick up on that. They're very sensitive. They picked up on that. Now, and we addressed that. We actually had that conversation with them about anger and what to do with it. And it's a temporary, we have all those conversations. Fast forward spring. We asked the same question. Less and less kids sat down when I got done with the anger part. And I thought that was really interesting. So what's my point? Kids pick up on what we think, what we say, and how we feel, not only in our home, in our neighborhood, in our school, in our community, and in our country. And because they have access to news 24/7, they can listen to the burp, 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 burp from both sides. It's frustrating. It's confusing. They don't understand. Their brains aren't fully developed yet, but they know people are mad. As a teenager, it's a great emotion to experience, and it's easy to get to. It's the most basal emotion we have as humans. Rage is right below that. Anger is a really easy place for us to go. Somebody cuts us off in traffic, we're angry. Somebody doesn't call us on time, we're angry, right? We're just angry waiting to happen. And our kids pick up on that. So what I'm clear about is it's important for us to be mindful in the environments we interact with children, that yes, you can have an emotion. Of course you can have an opinion. All of that, not a problem. However, you want to be mindful to and say, you know what, I'm really upset about this, but I'm going to work it out and find a solution to that. Or I'm going to be upset about it. I'm just going to sit back and see what happens, right? You can language that being angry is okay. You and I talk about this all the time. When we see tragedies or horrific things happening to our kids in the online space, I don't cry very often. That's how I know I'm wielded for this. I cry occasionally, and then I get mad, and then I get resolved, and then I go take an action. I use that upset to forward this conversation to protect our kids. And that's after years of personal growth and development. Our teenagers don't have that. So we've got to help them be a little bit more resilient when they're upset, to understand that the emotions that they're feeling in that moment in time, while valid, aren't going to last forever. I tell people, I said, you're upset, burp, it'll go away. It's kind of the same. It's a temporary, it's a swath of chemicals. But to be able to train our children and teach our children to build that resilience so they become unmessable with.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're seeing, is what's missing is our kids aren't being taught how to be resilient in the face of an obstacle. And it's easier for me to get mad, to go online, to go buy a drug, to go meet somebody new, or take some kind of risky behavior than to actually sit with, I'm angry, sad, upset, uncomfortable, and all the other variety of emotions we feel as human beings.
You said a mouthful, Jan. I mean, I'm glad you brought all of that up, because look, the adults are marching around so angry these days for the most part. You're in Florida, I'm in New York City, we're in Washington a lot together. People are mad. And I guess what I'm hearing you say, so our warriors can understand, is it's really happening, or you have to sit down, talk it through with your kids, right? Let them understand it's okay to feel all of this, but let's talk it through. Let's work on a solution. That's what you're saying. That's what I'm hearing. It's talking to kids.
Yeah.
And listen, Jan, I'm always saying we have to talk to kids. I mean, age appropriate, but honest and openly, because this is the landscape we live in today, which brings me to my next question. I mean, what is the difference you're seeing in children, teens targeted by predators in 2025? How has this evolved online? I'm just going to say in the last year, because I'm noticing and seeing things myself. What do you have to say about all this?
So it's interesting. We never talked about AI until about 3 years ago. And now it's one of our most important conversations. And 3 years ago, kids kind of knew what AI was. Now they're all in. They 100% understand what AI is. And what's interesting, Lynn, they understand the dangers.
They do.
They understand if you post a picture, someone can use that. They understand about the nudifying apps. They do. They understand the dangers of that and how they're starting to manage their online life. And the thing that, because we have age appropriate conversations, because we train elementary, middle, and high school, and we have different screenshots of the appropriate apps and video games that kids are using depending on their age. And because we're with young people every single week, we get feedback, right? We update our deck probably every 2 to 3 weeks, because we'll have one group of kids going, you don't have XYZ game. We're like, okay, and we'll take a note of it. Because we always ask, what's missing? Like, what do we not have on our screen? And they'll say, what I've been hearing lately is VR. They're starting to talk about VR more now than I've ever heard before. And I know Oculus is still out. I also understand Google and Ray-Ban connected with sunglasses, which makes me very nervous.
Yes, yes.
It makes me very nervous. So they're aware, and they want to, there's this bridge for young people to cross at some point in time as they get older. And that's, I've got to be hip enough to fit in, but I also have to be mindful enough not to get taken advantage of. And you add on top of that the current environment plus the swath of hormones we all experience during puberty, they're not going to think like we think. They're just not. And when we hear parents going, well, they should know better. Well, maybe, but this is being rewired on the daily. You ask your kids to take out the trash 3 times and they forget, even though you're right there. It's like, this is being rewired. So you've got to give some space and grace for, okay, what do we need to do for you to remember to put out the trash when I ask? And then have that conversation. It's the same thing with an online environment and online space. How do I teach you to be cognitive enough, yet give you the space to have fun on your video games? It's a balance. And because most parents don't understand this environment, they just hand their kid the phone, or they just hand their kid the PlayStation and say a prayer, as opposed to actually sitting down, watching them play the videos, or sitting down and saying, talk to me about this TikTok thing. I don't get it. Well, how is that any different from Reels or videos on Instagram? Help me understand. Right. So it's that, having those kinds of conversations with our children, both in the home environment, in the community environment, and quite frankly, the school. We have a school board whom I just adore. We work so well with them. And what they stand for is protecting our children, which I appreciate. And the reality is, we're at 60% divorce rate right now, which means you have a lot of kids going back and forth to different homes. You've got a lot of single parents managing one or multiple children. I don't have the time or space to have that kind of conversation every single day with our kids. So is it the school's responsibility? No. However, can you start to weave it into some of your relevant conversations? Yes. And can you invite organizations like Lynn's Warriors and Paving the Way Foundation to come in to have that conversation with your kids? 100%. And that's why we're so busy. People are starting to discover for themselves, you know way more about this than we do. You talk to the kids, and it's working. And to me, that's everything, because when you bring in, and I'm going to put in air quotes, an outside expert, I don't really like the term expert because we're always evolving, but when you bring someone from the outside in that's got credibility, that understands what's actually happening, both in the ether and here on the ground, and you're having those straightforward, authentic conversations with our kids, that's what makes the difference. That's what impacts and saves lives. That's what has kids go, I hadn't thought about that. Because when you have them do the thinking, when you have them solve the problem, it's theirs forever, and you save lives.
Yeah. Jan, you're giving us a lot of hope. I like this, because I feel like we've been chipping away for several years now at all of these issues. I also feel like you brought up AI, especially in the last year. That thing is a runaway train, but you're giving me hope that the kids are starting to recognize it.
They are.
Right?
They really are.
And that is, to me, the biggest thing that we've always hoped for. And also, I always tell kids, and reverse it. Talk to your parents and explain
Mhm.
to them about the gaming and about the apps and about what's going on.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I think you brought it up. I think the parents are so, well, they're busy, they're overwhelmed. We pointed out there's a lot of anger going on, a lot of issues around the
yeah.
country. People are just trying to pay their bills. It's very understandable. No
Mhm.
judgment.
No.
But so therefore they don't approach the subjects. They don't have time, and it's the last thing they want to do, 9 o'clock at night, is talk about all this.
Yeah.
But that brings me to my next question for you, Jan, is, what don't parents and guardians, because I like to say guardians, we have a lot of families made up of
We
all
do.
different dynamics.
We do.
We've got older siblings raising, younger ones. We've got aunties and uncles. We've got a lot of grandparents, right? What don't they understand? What doesn't the public understand about how trafficking begins? Okay, I'm talking about our kids right here in America,
Yes.
because I still get that pushback. Oh, you mean that happens here? As opposed to like Philippines and Thailand. They still don't get it. What can you share about that with us?
Sure. So while I love and appreciate films that attempt to tell the story, right? Everybody has heard of Taken. And yes, that is valid. And yes, it can happen that way, for
Yeah.
sure.
Mhm.
We talk about The Sound of Freedom. Valid. Yes, it can happen that way. And I'm going to ask a question, give you pause so your audience can do the thinking. What do those two films have in common? It's overseas. It's
Mhm.
overseas. We've done two, I think, videos, and it's still about truckers moving people. And then there's been a couple of SVUs that talk about it a little bit. There's some really great videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
And trafficking, I don't like the term because it denotes transportation. You don't have to
Agreed.
transport a
Agreed.
child. You don't have to transport someone for them to be trafficked. And and I think that's the first misnomer. And if you call it modern day slavery, people get upset about that too.
Yes.
So I think we've landed on the term exploitation, which is a little bit easier to understand, because when you're exploiting someone, that's like, oh, you're intentionally trying to harm them. Yes. Yes, that's a better explanation. And we've actually altered some of our languaging, not only on our website, but when we talk, is I'm talking about both child and adult exploitation, extortion, which has now become sextortion online. And so I think the term exploitation at least gets us in a better zip code to have this conversation. The
Interesting.
second, the second thing is the force, fraud, coercion.
That
We
was my
show
next question, Jan. I don't mean to interrupt. I was going to be like, please explain, because people rattle that off nonstop. I hear that all day long. Force for coercion, and we're on to the next thing.
yeah, yeah,
Explain, what is sex trafficking?
yeah. So it's so great because the government definition says the use of force, fraud, or coercion um, to force a human being to do something they would never choose to do. Now, we're blessed in the United States that we know no one under the age of 18 would cognitively choose to be exploited. We know that. No child's going to choose that. They may think it's a choice separate and distinct. And the uh,
Yeah.
exercise I use, and parents, please use this with your teenagers and your friends, quite frankly, as I do this with adults too. The shoes that you're wearing, you chose. You picked out your outfit today, you pulled your shoes out, and I always make sure everybody's got at least two pair of shoes, because we're in Title I schools. Not always the case, but almost everybody has at least two pair of shoes. And I'll say, okay, no, you chose those shoes. You cognitively said, I'm wearing the black tennies. I'm like, yeah, okay, great. I said, no one came into your room and shoved these tennis shoes in your face and said, you're wearing these or else you're not going to eat tonight. And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, so no one forced you to wear those shoes.
Mm-hmm.
No one came into your room and said, so if you wear these shoes, I'll help you up level in a game. No, no one did that. Okay, that's coercion. No one came in and said, okay, if you wear these shoes, I'll pay you $50, and then didn't pay you $50. That's fraud. You have to break it down so simply for young people. And our adults don't understand it either. And once they start to understand the force and the fraud, the coercion, you know what kids understand? Peer pressure. Everybody understands peer pressure. So it's being pressured into doing something that you know in your gut, you know in your head, in your logical brain, you shouldn't be doing. But because you want to fit in, you're going to do it anyway. Okay. So that's really the breakdown of force, fraud, or coercion inside that space. Now then, in the United States, we don't have to prove any of that for children because we know no child would choose that. And what becomes this really tricky age and this really tricky environment is 16, 17-year-olds. And you and I are both noticing states moving ages, childhood. No. I'm sorry. I think it should go up to 25. Your brain's not done yet. You're still going to make, if I'm 17 today and I turn 18 tomorrow, I'm still potentially going to make some not wise decisions. My brain's not done yet. So why they want to move it down, well, you and I both know why, but why they want to move it down to 16, 17, it's for nefarious reasons, in my humble opinion. So here I am, a 16, 17-year-old. Now I can drive a car. I can get a part-time job. So people think my brain's developed enough to understand the distinction of love bombing, Romeo pimp, and all these other things. Well, no, it doesn't, because the bottom line is, Lynn, we all want to be loved. We all want to belong.
Right.
We all want to feel like we're special. So if I don't have that environment at home, and maybe I'm a loner at school, maybe I've got one or two friends at school, but boy, this guy online, he says the nicest things, and it may feel a little rushed, but I haven't heard things like that ever in my life. And it makes me feel good. And I want to believe. And it's not just teenagers that get lured in. It's young adults and older adults and our seniors too. So these people intentionally prey on our emotions, on our desire to fit in, on our desire to belong, and they say all the right things. And then maybe, just maybe, we might get an inkling that this might be a little fast. And we push back a little. And then the pullback. I've been so nice to you. I've been so kind to you. I've done all these things. I've sent you money so you can get your nails done. I've sent you gifts via Amazon. And now you doubt my love for you? And then I ghost you. It's the push me, pull you manipulation, and that's where trauma bonding comes in. I think I sent you a link about, it was a really great explanation of trauma bonding. That's how trauma bonding starts. And this is a bad example, but it's the best one that I think almost everybody can relate to. If you've ever been around an abused animal, and dogs in particular, and you go to pet their head, they shrink back because they've been hit before. It's very similar. It's like you got to let them sniff your hand, come around to the side, and then pet their head. You can't just come at them because they're going to flinch. That's from trauma. That's a PTSD response from being beaten. Now, remove the beating short term for a child's brain that's still being developed. It's still very malleable. And this felt so good. He made me feel so good. She made me feel so good. I don't get that anywhere else. I'm going to go back. And so when they ghost me, it wants me want them more. And they know this. That's how trauma bonding starts. And it's why people don't understand, because people look back and go, well, clearly that guy was manipulating you. Well, okay, you're a 55-year-old man. You're an adult. You understand how this works. It's a 12, 13, 14-year-old girl. It's an 18-year-old girl. I'm sorry, it's a 24-year-old boy. No, they don't, because they've never been taught the difference. They've never trusted themselves. And the first time that someone's that kind to them, they just want to believe and belong. And that's the piece that's missing, is people are looking at this crime from their non-trauma bonded, non-PTSD logical brain. You can't comprehend it because you've never experienced. However, I promise every single one of us had that one friend that we knew better. We knew we shouldn't have climbed over the fence to go swimming in, the neighbor's pool. We knew better. We knew not to get on our bikes and, ride our bikes downtown at midnight. We knew better than to get in the car. We knew better, yet we did it anyway.
Right.
And then because we did it thinking it was a cognitive choice versus an emotional overriding choice, we feel bad. So that's where the shame and the embarrassment and the guilt comes in. I should have known. Well, how could you have known? No one's ever had this conversation with you before.
Right.
How could you know? And then the traffickers and the predators coach these children of exactly what their parents are going to say, which bonds them even more to that person. Your parent's going to tell you can't go out. Your parent's going to take away your phone. Your parent's going to limit your screen time. And because parents don't understand, they're going to do all those things because that's what they think they're supposed to do. Versus, it's like, hang on, honey, let's have a conversation about this. Talk to me about this. Share with me. You're not in trouble. Your brain's not done yet. I know you want to be loved. So do I. Let's talk about this. We haven't trained our parents to parent in that way. We haven't educated our kids that it's safe enough to open to a trusted adult to talk about it, because there's so many adults that are harming our children. We're in a little bit of a conundrum, which is why I'm so adamant about educating our children. Our children, sadly, they're starting to become our frontline defense with their parents right behind them and their teachers right behind them too, because our parents don't fully understand what's happening. They didn't grow up with this. We are digital immigrants. Our kids are digital natives. They understand the platforms. We don't. And we've got to start having those kind of conversations to understand what's going on over there, so I can get it from over here, and then we can actually have a dialogue.
Jan, I don't know where to go with all of that, but my mind's spinning, but you hit the nail on the head. I like the idea of, I've never liked sex trafficking. I don't like the word trafficking. I've used the word slavery because it's the enslavement. But that, as you pointed out, that doesn't go over that well sometimes. And also, depending what the audience is, that's just the truth, right? It has other connotations. I've been using a lot exploitation, sexual exploitation lately. You pointed out, which I agree with. It kind of coats it a little bit, which is fine. If that gets somebody to pay more attention, that's fine. I want to share with you, because it just popped into my head. You mentioned the word before, pressure, right? Somebody's pressuring somebody.
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure. Well, I was just 2 days ago in the vestibule of a bank getting some cash out of the cash machine. And there's a young woman who's the security guard. And she's in the outfit, I would say to you, if she was 22, the oldest she was, 22, right? Looks like a baby in security, outfit.
Right.
And as I'm at the cash machine, a woman comes in and starts talking to her. And I'm overhearing this conversation, my back's to them. And the woman's saying to her, why do you want to do this job? What's your name? I work in a financial firm. Give me your phone number. What's your name? Why would you want to stand here and look at these people all day? This went on and on. So of course I pretend it, I take my money, and then I'm standing in the corner pretending like I'm on my phone. I'm waiting for somebody, taking in. This woman went on and on and on, Jan. And she kept saying to this young woman, so I'm going to see you Monday, right? And this young woman's like, well, I'm working Monday. She's like, what time? And the young woman says, well, 6 o'clock. She says, we're open 24 hours a day. Here's my personal number. You call me. I am here for you. Now, this went on and on and on. Okay. I waited. I had to go to an appointment, but I don't care. I was late because I was not letting this get away.
No way.
No way. She goes. I step up to this young woman and I'm like, I know you don't know me, but I've seen you here before. I want you to understand what this is. And she says to me, I would never go, to a stranger's place. And she was giving the address on Broadway, the this, the that. Okay. I did hear the young woman say to her, do you have a business card? And she said, no, I don't carry cards with me. It was so blatant, Jan. And I was angry because
Mhm.
of course they would do things like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
these traffickers, but it didn't occur to me because you and me don't think like that.
No.
So I'm talking to the young woman then, and I said, well, did you give her your phone number? She said, yes. I said, well, why did you feel compelled to give her? She said, well, I'm going to block it. I said, but you don't owe anybody anything, a stranger who comes up to you when you're doing your job. I said, I can guarantee she's involved in things that you cannot go near. Oh, and she also said to her, oh, and you can come by and bring a friend with you. I heard, and she said, oh, I would never do it. But why I'm telling you this is because A, I want to share that this is going on. We have to create some sort of awareness that this is happening right
Yes.
now on the street. Okay.
Mhm.
But also that this young woman felt compelled. She could have been 20 or 19. I couldn't tell really.
She's young.
Young, felt compelled to give her number, even though like she knew it wasn't right, which goes to what you were saying. Says she will never go to where this woman was telling her to go on Broadway. Yet she was saying, yeah, I'm going to call you. Yeah, I'm going to go there. Yeah, I'm going to show up. And the woman was so persistent.
Mhm.
But now the woman knows where she works.
Yes. Yes.
So, like, this is where the danger is. So I said, you never have to give out personal information, and nobody should be soliciting anybody on their job.
No.
Because
And make sure your manager knows, make sure people know, and have someone walk you to your car from now on.
well, she takes the subway because I asked her, but
Well,
I just
to
said to
walk
her,
her to the whatever, someone needs to be with her for a while, and she's got to keep her eyeballs open.
but listen to what she said to me, and it goes to what you're saying about pressure and the brain, and we know things aren't right. Young kids, they do it anyway. She said to me, well, I said, well, why didn't you just cut her off? Because it was very lengthy. The woman was really like pressuring her. And the woman was very well dressed.
Mhm.
I saw expensive handbags, shoes, the whole bit. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And she said, well, I didn't want to make a fuss. And I'm like, see, that's how they think. So I told her, okay, you're going to speak to your manager. She said, no, I don't want to get my job jeopardized. This is the thinking. I said,
Yes.
listen, here's my card. I know you don't know me. I work in this, unfortunately, every day. You can reach out to me. I'm in the neighborhood as well. You have a friend. But see, that was a prime example. I'm sharing this with you because this is happening. Like, they have no shame, these people. So
No,
they're doing it
none.
online, and they're doing it. Another child I just posted the story right in front of his parents in Coney Island. The guy came up and picked the 6-year-old boy up in front of the parents and was trying to run away. Luckily, the parents and strangers ran after him and grabbed the child. They're actually now snatching, and I'm seeing like an uptick in this. The media may not report. I don't think they're reporting on this, but
No.
actual taking children physically or approaching them, at their job. That's not to say this woman isn't going into, I don't know, the CVS's or the TJ Maxx or wherever and
Who
just
knows?
soliciting. And what young person isn't going to want to hear? I heard her say, oh, you can make 7, 8 times the amount of money. Like, come on now. So we have to sound the alarm about
We
all
do.
of this, and especially about educating the adults.
Mhm.
Jan, do you ever do joint like kids and caretakers and parents together? Because I find here in New York they don't want that, and I'm trying.
Well, I don't want it because kids won't be straight up.
But
They won't.
after you educate the kids, and
Yeah.
then like have
Well,
the
even
kids
then, because
lead the group.
I still like them separate because
Okay.
I'm going to have a little bit more adult conversation with an adult, and I'm going
Okay.
to use some terms that I would never use with young people. Embody, it's a different dialogue because they're adults, and we just educated a whole group of firefighter leaders that work with youth, and I rarely have a speaking event where someone doesn't come up to me and have a conversation. These people were so blown away by what they didn't know. It's like they couldn't get out of the room fast enough. Now, as I
Wow.
was leaving, they were all thanking me.
Yeah.
But it's so confronting for how naive we are as adults about this environment, and then they're with kids, and I know where they were mentally because I talked to the person that coordinated it. He said, Janie goes, we're all living in the world of, oh my gosh, we missed kids. We missed them. We missed it. I wish I had known this a year ago. I wish I'd known this 2 years ago. I wish. And I had one young person in there. She's 18. She participated, and then she became a counselor, and now she's a assistant site director, which I think is super cool.
Right.
And I looked at her. I go, was I spot on? She was 100%.
Mm.
And I'm like, thank you for the validation, and toddled out the door. Right. But I know adults, when I share when we talk about what we do in an adult setting, and I'm always the last person to introduce myself. Because I'm like, I'm going to be the Debbie Downer of the cocktail party. I share stories of hope at the same time, but it's a challenging topic. And people have called me afterwards and said, Jan, there was this girl, or there was this boy.
Yes.
And they know they missed it. They knew something was off, but they didn't know what to do. Now, I'm happy to say, with the Blue campaign and all these new organizations that are popping out, which is great, we're no longer alone, Lynn, in having these dialogues. And I think more and more people are making the phone call and taking action, which is brilliant. And I also want them to know what conversation to have with their young people and their coworkers and their other workers, because easy money sounds great. And I can picture this little girl, 20-year-old girl, right, in her uniform, standing there doing the same thing every day, dreaming of what it would be like to be famous, or what it would be like to live in a penthouse, or what it would be like to be able to purchase that kind of handbag.
Yes. That's it.
Thinking that's the goal. And because our media has done a great job at diminishing our role in the world, has done a great job commoditizing us, a great job at suppressing men's ability to communicate and to share what they're dealing with, because it's not manly enough. We have the environment that we have, that it's all about all that glitters isn't gold. And once kids start to understand that, it's tempting. Look, we all get, it was like, oh, that purse is so pretty. It's $1,000. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'll go look at the consignment shop, or I'll go look at the vintage stores, right? It's alluring. We get it. And at some point in time, somewhere along the way, at what cost my soul, at what cost my life, at what cost my future? Because these young people that are harmed, they're never the same.
No.
It
Lifelong.
can't be. It is. You are, by not having this conversation, our children that experience this are now subjected to a lifelong sentence. I've had multiple survivors say those words.
Yes.
Because it is a daily battle. Life's already challenging enough. And you add this on top of it, the daily, can I trust you? The triggers that you don't know when they're coming. Wanting to believe in people and still never really quite sure, because you've been betrayed so many times. It's harming our society. And as ugly as it is, and as uncomfortable as it is, it's what's happening. And we've got to get our brave on. We've got to have, like our friend Connie says, courageous conversations.
Yes.
Because it literally will save lives, short-term and long-term. It's just what there is to do. And luckily, there's organizations like yours. There's organizations like mine. There's organizations, like NCMEC. There's organizations all over the country that are standing shoulder to shoulder on this topic, because we believe the same thing. We want to protect our kids. We want to protect our families, so they can have a shot out in life to live the life that they're designed to live. Yeah. This is a really good shortcut to not experience that. I know you don't go inside this space but I feel really compelled to say it, as I tell my team. I said, we are walking into the devil's playground every single day when we go into a church. I said, he is counting on us not going there. And sometimes we run into things, right? I said, but these kids are our future, and we will stand shoulder to shoulder. And I tell my new interns, I said, I don't know where you are spiritually. I said, but I pray for you every morning and every night. And if you've got people, if you're not, that's not a problem. I said, and I'm just going to ask you, if you have people like that in your life, for them to pray for you too, because this is a spiritual battle, man. And and we're the foot soldiers here, and there's other stuff happening beyond the veil that we can't see, and it's important that we all stand together as a unit to protect our children, because they are our future.
Jan, I just want you to know I light a lot of candles at St. Paul's. I just want you to know that. I may not talk about it.
It's okay. No, it's okay.
I make my little detours, and for all children and for all people and
all
for
families.
our country and for our country. This is a full kind of assault on everybody and our way of life and health, the healthcare. It goes national security. It goes into all of that. All of it. All of the crime. We know many trafficked are, especially the kids, are forced into doing crimes such as drugs or trafficking peers. It is that wheel with spokes I talk about all the time that makes the wheel go around. So I am right there with you as far as evil. Evil's lurking all over, and we have to just be warriors and teach everybody else how to be loving, peaceful warriors. And that brings me to, I was covering a lot, and why not? Because how should I put this? These Shawn Combs, I have always referred to him way before this is Dirty Diddy, right? Coming out of the music business, knowing a lot of people involved with him over the years, but I can't really call him that anymore. I don't even want to give him a cute nickname. I'm going to call him Shawn Combs, AKA Diddy. Everybody should know that by now. I want this to be a moment, since it was so extensively covered and will continue to be in the media, because it's celebrity, it's power, it's wealth, it's rap music, which in my opinion is nothing more than a sex trafficking operation, but that's just my opinion. I had to turn to you. It's when my light bulb, it was happening, Jan, but it's when my light bulb really went off when I heard how Shawn Combs, how his lawyer was calling, his story with Cassie Ventura a modern day love story, and how we saw video, of beatings and this, and she loved it and she wanted it, and she wrote text messages, I'm going to meet you, I'm going to do it for you. And then the jury. I had to turn to you to say, people in society do not understand what sex trafficking is. The justice system does not understand what sex trafficking is, in my opinion, and we need reform. We have to go out there, Jan, and we must reform. I know you're doing it. I'm doing it, but I'm going to pick it up on this end, what it is, because to me, this was a case of sex trafficking. I
100%.
clearly saw the force, the fraud, the coercion. I saw it, and people don't understand. They say, well, Cassie took money. Has nothing to do with it. That's what people don't understand. We have to do a better job of explaining this. How do we get around that, Jan? Obviously, boots on the ground, communities we can do, but what about the justice system? They're really lacking a lot of them in what it actually is, and going by laws on the books kind of thing.
Well, I think it's a loaded question.
It's a loaded one, but
I am not an attorney. Okay.
Who is? I'm not either.
I know. Well, there are people, I think there are attorneys you could really dive into that question, but I think it's more of a jury conversation. And I mean that by, so I'm just going to use the case, and I might get a couple things wrong, but so he has 2 counts of transportation using the Mann Act.
Yes.
Okay. So he was transporting just to transport and then no trafficking? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
They don't understand. They do not understand.
But hang on. It's not that they don't understand. It's I think the misunderstanding of the transportation, force, fraud, coercion, right? And people thinking, because I've had young people ask me when we talk about this. I've had young people ask me, well, what about the girls down in the truck? And I don't ever make any question wrong. And I go, and because that is the, they're leaning back, well, what about, that's their body language, not mine. And I'll smile and I'll say, that's a really great question. Right. And so there's like a shock that I didn't get angry or anything. And I said, let me ask you a question back. And I'll kind of look to the group. I said, let me ask you a question back. Do you think, like cognitively, there's no smart alecky answer here. Do you think someone would choose, as in the shoes choice conversation we had earlier, someone would choose to be raped 10 to 15 to 25 times a night by smelly, gross people? They don't need to answer. I don't need to answer because they know the answer. So that distinguishes it right there. And then I'll say, now, what could be perceived as choice is I have no other way to feed my child. This is the only thing I know. That's called survival sex. And traffickers will take advantage of that. I can't pay my rent.
Yes.
If I don't have this, I'll lose my child. Okay? That's survival. That's not cognitive choice. And if you put the shame, the guilt, the embarrassment, all of those emotions, we all know. When I talk to adults, I'm like, how many of you still have parents alive? They'll raise their hand. I'm like, do you want to disappoint your parents? They're like, no. And I go, and you're like in your 40s. What do you think that's like for someone that's 14, 15, 18, 22? They don't, because adults don't understand, and they've forgotten what it's like to be vulnerable mentally and emotionally and spiritually. And then, of course, physically, because you're a child. They've just forgotten. We have adultified our children, which is the other part of the problem. So it's doing the thinking of, would somebody really choose that? Really? Now, there's some TED Talk out there about some girl in England who chose that life. I have questions about that. But in reality, most of humanity would never cognitively, if there were a bunch of other options, they're going to choose that. And I don't know of one 5-year-old or 10-year-old or 15-year-old child that goes, yeah, I think I want someone to abuse my body every night and starve me and not let me see the sun and then beat me if I don't. Yep, that's the kind of life I want. No.
Nobody says it. And you know what, Jan, we know if they do say it, it's because they're brainwashed. They are suffering from trauma bonding or trauma. Like, this is the thing people have to understand. It's trauma.
Messes with your brain.
Well, I'm just going to bring it up again. You know, we have sentencing with Shawn Combs. I think it can be, I know, even just with our work at the Warriors, I did change a few people's mind, like in the media, talking to them about certain things. But I do want to point out, Jan, most lawyers I spoke with or I saw in the media were all, they said no sex trafficking for him. No, they were not. They were like, he's overcharged. This is not sex trafficking, because they don't understand what you and me are talking about.
Yeah. And I think educating our law students,
yes,
and then having a required CEU every year that's not some video that checked by the box, like you got to go to a class. Because while I appreciate it takes a little more time, attention, energy, and funding, nothing replaces face-to-face conversation, and nothing replaces the opportunity for me as an attorney to talk to other attorneys and to be trained by an attorney that's trained in this, like Lisa Haba or James Marsh, okay? Yes. To have them share with them, here's what it is, here's what it looks like, here are the laws on the books that protect our people, because again, no one would choose this life. And for them to fully grasp what it is. Now, don't use it as some false charge, but you can't charge, well, apparently you can. It makes no logical sense to charge someone with the transportation in order to traffic and not traffic. It makes no sense to me how that happened. And there are other things. And, one of our friends online has said, we don't know what they were given. We don't know what instructions they were given. We don't know.
Exactly. We'll never know.
We'll never know. And I truly believe the work that we're doing, Lynn, not only educates our children and our families, that's the primary, but the other thing I believe it does as well is it reduces the opportunity for someone to become a buyer.
Mm-hmm.
I think it reduces the opportunity for someone to become a trafficker or predator. And I think it creates future juries that actually understand
Yes.
what this is, because we had a similar case here in Orlando, and I was talking to one of our detectives, and he was devastated because we work really close. They work really closely together with the prosecutor, and the prosecutor's extraordinary. And jury wasn't convinced because the jury has, we'll come back around to the beginning of the conversation, they have taken or Sound of Freedom or SVU or some other thing in their brain. And I also, in my heart of hearts, this is one of the darkest things, most heinous crimes. And I don't think people can actually be with that someone could do that to another human being.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
Yeah.
Here in the United States.
I agree,
Over
but
there,
then I have to say, but
over there, sure, they're not
yeah, but
like
Jan,
us.
but here's what I have to say about that. I got to jump on you on this one. Then why in the United States, let's get real now, is all of this escalating right in our own backyards, to use that? Why is it that more people who probably never would go near anything with kids are going near it? Because, this lack of accountability or enforcement, it's all escalating. And we're talking right here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why?
You know,
Why we have to?
what? I think part of it is the past several years, people got away with crimes and there was no accountability from the very lowest of low to the highest of highs.
Mm-hmm.
And until people are held accountable,
Mm-hmm.
all people are held accountable, are arrested, charged, go to trial, and go to jail with the full weight of the justice system behind them.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we got. And it
Well,
stinks.
it stinks. But that was the importance of the Shawn Combs case, Jan, that
Yeah.
it wasn't just about him per se, his victims. Okay, I'm going to call them his victims because they were victims. It was really, all of the voices that have been silenced.
Yes.
All of
And
those who've
that's what
experienced.
upsets me the most.
That's what upset me the most.
Once
Yes.
again, a
Yes.
victim is not believed.
Exactly.
We don't
And
make
also,
this stuff up. People don't. The horrific experiences that individuals have had. There's no movie that shows it in reality. There's no book that describes it in reality, unless it's written by a survivor. And even then, they get into some detail, but not the reality of it. It's too traumatic to share. So that's the piece that upsets me the most, is yet again, we've told the victims, thanks for stopping by, being, sharing your heart, your soul, all of it, and being not believed yet again. It's upsetting.
That was the worst for me as well. Why would victims come forward? Why are they going to risk everything? But here's what we're sitting at in New York City right now. People must come out and vote in November, because we have a man who wants to be mayor who fully, 33 years old, and his 27-year-old wife believe in sex workers. A term we don't even use at the Warriors, prostituted people, forced fraud. We just don't use sex workers. The media uses it all the time. Most people use it. We don't. Sex is not work. Work is not sex. And he has not put this, Jan, I will say, in his manifesto. That's what I'm calling it. Right. So why he may be promising free bus fare, which is impossible, and free groceries and all this stuff, he fully behind the scenes, and nobody seems to know about this. I've been talking about it all week long. He wants people, our young people, and it's out there. It's okay when you grow up. Now we know what that means, right? When you grow up, that could be a 16-year-old, right? The way things are. When you grow up, it's okay to be a sex worker. Your body, your choice. We're going to give you all kinds of health benefits, They're opening the biggest sex-friendly clinic down the street from me. Okay. It's going to be open 24 hours. You can self-swab for diseases. You can get everything for free. But the title on the building is going to be like sex workers health care something. So again, putting it into society, normalizing it, habituating everybody, especially our kids who are going to see this. It to me is so shocking and criminal. It really must be stopped. I mean, it must be stopped.
There has to be an education program media wide. And if you look at what happened in Germany,
yes,
that's the example. It's a lie. It doesn't go well, and it's actually increased the trafficking of children.
Yes, it has.
Now, given different points of view, that's okay for some people. It's not okay for me.
It's not okay for me.
And there's got to be somebody in your backyard that feels the same way, that you can partner up with and get that out, because we had some similar stuff down here with 2 other pieces of legislation, and the videos are slick, and if you watch the video, you're like, well, that makes sense to me, but you got to go read the bill. And until you go actually read the bill and fully understand what the bill means, it's the only way you're going to vote against it. And that's the pieces. You've got to explain this to people in a way that resonates for them. Because
yes,
you telling me stuff is free and I have a particular kind of lifestyle, that sounds great. If I live a completely different, and well, it doesn't impact me, it does. And people don't get the impact. And that's where the difference becomes of, you've got to educate yourself. And if we go back to the reason why parents don't have this conversation with their kids and don't have this, we're overwhelmed, overworked, and bombarded on the daily with stuff, scrolling to death, as our friend Nikki says. So there's got to be a way to educate your population up there up to what it really is, not what they think it is, not some shiny, slick advertising says it is, what it really is, and the damage it's going to do to your population. And if people don't care, I can't make people care, but I can educate, right? And if I educate well enough, and that turns some, naysayers or doesn't matter to me or isn't going to impact me, for them to go, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Okay, well then we've made a difference, my friend. And that's what's got to happen up there.
Well, I've begun. I am trying.
Good.
I'm on the mission, and I'm talking to a lot of media people. But Jan, they are not very receptive to this. They'll be like, we're not, And I'm sending them actual links that prove things that have been written and things like that. I'm not making this up, because we're based on facts and truths at the Warriors. Well, Jan Edwards, pavingthewayfoundation.org is the website. We must speak more often, but I want you to finish us up with some final words, because despite all of this, again, it's real, it's raw, it's reality, everybody. We have to talk about it and protect our kids and protect families, protect everybody, right? Give us some final thoughts. What do you want everybody to know? How can they help you? I know donations are always warranted, always, because also research, education programs, travel, that costs money, Warriors. You know that, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where the monies go. That is what is most appreciated. There's opportunities to be a volunteer.
This is a made up background, y'all. So
it's a very nice one.
Thank you. Yeah.
I just blur my background, and that's what you get here.
My background's a blank wall. So
no, but blank walls are preferred. But I don't. Yeah, they're always like, have a neat bookcase behind you or a blank wall. I'm like, nah, I don't have that. I'll just blur it. No. But really,
so here's I'm gonna
give us some final words.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave you with 2 pieces of hope. So my team was out educating today, and one of the boys, I'm gonna quote it. One of the boys said, "I thought this was gonna be boring, but it wasn't. Thanks."
Oh, good.
Right. And we hear things at the end of our 2 days, because we do pre and post test day 1 and day 2, and day 3 we do a recap and we have them do a poster. And we hear things like, because we ask them, would you recommend this training and why? And a lot of kids will say, I didn't know. Now I can save my friend. I didn't know. Now I can save the world. This is important so it can save lives. So kids really do understand the importance of this once you have the conversation. And parents, once they understand, they decrease the busyness of their kids. They create phone-free zones. It's like everybody's phone's in the bag for the first 2 hours we're home. We're going to dance. We're going to cook. We're going to sing. We're going to go for walks. We're going to play board game. We're going to connect, because we've forgotten how to do that. And just those two, it's making a difference, because I have parents find me, I'll be wandering around and they're like, aren't you? And I'm like, sure. Because, and they're like, I just need to say thank you. My daughter or my son stopped XYZ, game, video, they deleted this app. We spend more family time together. And while the topic is dark, the conversation is enlivening, and it does make a difference. We are altering future generations. And my team and I talk about this a lot. We are planting seeds whose trees, the shade, we will never sit under. And I'm okay with that. And if you've never seen the movie The Old Guard, it's one of my favorites, you'll get the context of that. You have to watch the whole thing, because it doesn't, like, the pull around doesn't happen till the very end. But that's what we are, is we're making a difference that might not be felt for generations, but we're making a difference, Lynn. And when people stand along beside us, they get to make a difference too.
Amen, sister. But Jan Edwards, I also want to just throw out for anybody listening in Texas or that area, with what's going on with the floods. I think we should acknowledge that, Jan. And I don't even know what to say. We're praying for you. We're with you and the children. It is heartbreaking. I don't know what to say, except there's a lot of support and love being given out. And I'll be lighting more candles right after this for these children, especially that are missing. Unbelievable. We see it, we hear it, and we're sending our love and our support. And that's
we are. Have been stopping throughout the day, past couple of days, just saying prayers, because it's a nightmare I can't even fathom.
I can't, and that's all we can do. But we want people to know that, you're in Florida, I'm in New York City, but we're acknowledging them. We know this is going on. And yes, and we're absolutely praying for you.
We're with you. And my money, I'll be sending some of my money that way. I've got friends on the ground, and once they're settled, I'm like, you tell me where I need to send some money and I'll do that. Right.
Yes.
Just whoever and wherever needs it the most, you just tell me where I need to send a little bit of money so I can do that.
Thank you, Jan. And we're following along with the warriors. We all need, but that just goes, Jan, I really think in 2025, we live in a country now where everybody can and must do something. The littlest thing to whatever you can do. I just think it's a different, volunteering. We all have to, it's just different from the way we grew up. You have to, then you could choose if you wanted to volunteer or what, but now I think it's kind of a mandatory. I don't like the word mandatory.
No.
We just live in a different environment where everybody's got to step up and do a little something,
There's nothing more fulfilling than making an impact for another human being. And it can be something as small as a smile to someone while you're walking down the street, to, a $5 tip at your local barista, when your coffee costs you $1.50 or $2, right? Or, having that conversation with that friend because you haven't heard from them for a while. We can all do something. It doesn't have to cost you money. When people ask how they can participate, I always start, you've got 4 ways you can help us. First of all, you can pray. It doesn't cost you anything but time. Right? It doesn't have to be some lengthy prayer. Just pray for people on the front lines and pray for people in this space. 2, share our posts, share the stuff we put online, because what we share is valuable and it's informative, and you just never know who it's gonna touch, right? 3rd, you can volunteer, and volunteering can be something as simple as going, hey, Jan, you need me to send any letters out? Yeah, that'd be great.
Yes.
or, and lastly, of course, be a financial champion with us. So there's something for everyone. You don't have to take this on as your mantle, and just spending a couple of moments and saying a little prayer or being kind to another human being. You have no idea the impact that can make. It literally could save a life. So that's what we do.
Those are wonderful final words. I mean, Jan Edwards, you're an incredible warrior. I'm proud to know you. You're tireless, you're fearless, you're absolutely essential in this fight. And I just want to say, from Lynn's Warriors, we thank you always for speaking the truth. I'm so happy we've become friends. I learned so much from you. I really do, every single day, Jan. Your work is really a light, a path forward for kids and for families and survivors everywhere. And we stand with you, and we'll keep standing with you. And together, we'll stand with you until every child is safe. So Jan Edwards, President, Paving the Way Foundation, thank you for spending the time with me. Promise me you'll come. It's been too long. You'll come back more frequently, because we have a lot of issues to talk about and we want to educate everybody. So thanks, Jan.
Excellent.